Hey, thanks very much for joining us and apologize for the tad delay in getting started. Again, thanks very much. This is an incredibly important afternoon. We're going to discuss for about an hour really veteran transition and those aspects of how veterans are transitioning and what's important in terms of those very precise, I would say, defining pillars which underpin the platform of this notion of selfless service. So my name is Spider Marks, retired Army Major General, spent over 30 years in uniform and was absolutely blessed and honored to be a part of this thing called defense of our nation. And I have the great opportunity today to serve with on this panel and to moderate this panel with three incredible veterans. And I'll introduce them in just a second. Now, every year, thousands of men and women in uniform and their families leave military service behind and transition back into their communities, back into civilian life. The Centurion Military Alliance is the nation's premier transitional assistance platform, providing the most comprehensive military to civilian community-based transition assistance curriculum available for military service members and their families. It's what's out there today, and it's accessible. And it works. Today, our panelists will bring their diverse experiences to bear on the topic of what we can do, what we collectively can do to help empower veterans transitioning from active duty to civilian life. These panelists will share their individual stories, their experiences about their own transitions, their education and entrepreneurial journeys, which are quite phenomenal, and discuss policies that can help veterans pursuing educational and economic empowerment. And that's truly what it's all about, is these veterans are trusted in these incredible circumstances that they've been a part of. Let's be frank, for the last 2 decades, we've been at war, and now they are coming back, and that same sense of purpose is absolutely essential to facilitate this transition. First of all, let me introduce the panelists. Dr. Shante Hall is the CEO of Centurion Military Alliance, whose mission it is to help veterans in transition get the resources they need to succeed. Dr. Hall, proudly, is a U.S. Air Force veteran. Dr. Kekai Namahu is the founder and CEO of Namahu Technological and Industrial, and is also a nationally recognized cybersecurity expert. Dr. Namahu is president of Dynamic Advancement, a professional development firm which provides Veterans Administration approved post-secondary education and training. Dr. Namahu is a retired Air Force veteran. And then Miss Michelle Lowe. Michelle Lowe serves as the Director, Human Resources of Montgomery County, Tennessee, which, if I'm not mistaken, is just outside Fort Campbell. Michelle holds a master's degree in early childhood development from Trident University and a master's in pastoral counseling from Liberty University. Miss Lowe is a retired Army veteran. So let's get right into our discussion here, folks. Let's talk about transition assistance and what those various programs look like. You know, there are some that are what I call the bellwether, the standard in terms of transition, yet our own individual experiences have come up short. But before we can talk about what those particular gaps might be in transition, let's talk about what the programs look like and exist and how they exist right now. If I can, let me start with you, Shante. Can you please walk us through your understanding? And clearly you're an expert in this field. You've spent an immense amount of time, not only as a veteran, but as a transitioning Air Force airman, and then back into your civilian life and the advancements you've made since then. What were your experiences and how would you describe these transition assistance programs?
Thank you, Spider. I would say first and foremost to not make this about myself, but to make it about where we are right now with the transition assistance program. And I think that we've come light years from the day that I actually got out of active duty, which was 2008, and then as a reservist. So I went through the transition assistance program several different times. Where we are today, I'm very proud of the DoD efforts to ensure that we are advancing, we are pushing forward, we are partnering with the community efforts and collaborating to truly support the military service member and their families during transition. If we look at where the program is now and the reason and the methodology behind it, the Department of Defense realized years ago the critical impact of TAP. And at one point, it was not mandatory. Thankfully, today, we're looking at a program that is mandatory for all of service members, regardless of rank. And then we now also are including their family members in that transition. I would say that the importance of a transition assistance program and prior to going in to a TAP class lies within each of us. It lies within the service member, the veteran, the spouse, the caregiver, and why they're attending. Yes, it's a check mark. Some view it as I just have to go, but the impact is there is valid research, there's information, there is, again, community partnerships. And how do I know this? Well, Centurion Military Alliance has several MOUs with these major military installations to come in and to provide support. We teach that in order to understand the reason for the transition assistance program, we have to understand where we presently are. And that's called positionality. If you're going into a class, if you're taking a workshop for the sake of taking it or checking a box, you're missing an opportunity to connect and engage. You're missing an opportunity to network. And so first I would put it as myself, as I raised my right hand to serve, defend, and protect this nation. And as I look to transition, I'm going to own it. And I'm going to say, okay, here are the resources that are provided to me. How can I ensure that they are applicable to me? And what I do with that afterwards, honestly, it is up to me. And we'll get into how we can make it better and the loopholes and the gaps. But the reason behind it, the initiative behind it, we stand firm and we say we're thankful, we're appreciative of, again, not just the efforts of the DoD and the DOL and the VA, but that of the communities and the other nonprofit organizations and the entities that are collaborating with the DoD, with the Transition Assistance Program. So for that, thank you.
Shante, that's wonderful. You know, before we go on to the next panelist very quickly, I'd like to ask if you each could give some additional experiences that you encountered or that you had as a result of your transition that might be specific to you. And again, Shante made a really good point. Look, this is about the services obligation, and each individual service member is going to have a different journey going through this. And so those specific, what I call scar tissues that we all acquired during this period of transition, if you could put a little exposure on that, that would be very helpful, because that, again, as Dr. Hall has indicated, that's going to drive the conversation. That's going to drive the policy. That's going to drive the changes that we think are necessary, because every post-camp and station embraces transition differently. And I think that's the key. So Dr. Namahu, can you please explain a little bit about your experience?
Well, sure, no problem. Thanks, Spider, for that. And kind of picking up where Shante left off, and as you did as well. Every base really does it their own way. The experience may be different depending on where you're going through it. Luckily for me, I went through at JBSA, Lackland Air Force Base. Pretty robust transition assistance or transition program, if you would, right? Military City, USA. So I did have a lot of resources available to me. But going back to your question about some scar tissue that may have been developed, right? So while I was going through my transition, I had actually already started one of my businesses. So I was going through the process in kind of a unique scenario, right? I noticed that majority of the discussion was around job interviews and answering questions and what do you ask and salary negotiation. And it was, I'm not going to say useless, but for me, but it was tough because I was trying to learn more about the other side of it, right? And in addition to that, some of the information they were sharing, I was telling the people that were sitting next to me, hey, I don't know if that's actually 100% accurate. I get it. They have a curriculum they have to stick to. I get it. But I was sharing my story. I was like, hey, no, I actually own a business. I do hiring, and I'm hiring and paying these people out of my own pocket. So I'll tell you the things that I'm looking for. And then within a day or two, I was holding these little sessions with my my neighbors in class, and so that was probably my biggest issue, I guess, with it. I get it though. I get the aperture needs to be wide, right? The aperture needs to be wide, and like you said, what Shante said, the first couple iterations before they were doing anything, we need to get something going. It's come a long way, but for me, that was probably my biggest experience.
So negotiation skills, I got to tell you, when I departed service, I told people initially, look, I don't know how to negotiate jack. You know, I know how to take orders. I know how to push back on a boss. I know how to offer some recommendations. But if you're asking me to negotiate compensation, man, I am in the woods and I am out of luck. So good on you. You had some pretty good experience you could share with your colleagues. That's wonderful. Michelle, can you give us some of your experiences, because you had a unique experience in the military. I mean, you were from first handshake as a recruiter to the final salute and honoring that soldier as he or she departed service. I mean, that's the proverbial soup to nuts, and I'm sure you saw everything in between in terms of right and wrong.
Absolutely. So my experience is a lot different. I did get out in 2008, just like Shante. And so I actually retired out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And if you know anything about, there is no Army base around. There is an Air Force base about 2 hours from Sioux Falls, 2 or 3 hours. So it was nowhere to out process. I literally had to go to Fort Leavenworth to do my out processing. And it was literally a 1-day trip. So you go down, you do your out processing, they do the workshops, the resume writing, for example. There was no out processing there. And I would say, out of what we're saying, is there is a forgotten group of people that are not on a traditional military installation, right? And how do we process these folks out? Because I didn't get the same service. In fact, when I retired, they lost my military records, right? So what do I do now? I'm waiting on the VA. Yeah, I've heard the stories about it happening, and there was like no record of me. And so what do I do? And so I had to navigate that on my own, really a 1-day workshop of saying, this is what we do, this is who we are. But I would say that that transition part was a lot of scar tissue, because I really say the resume writing part of it was, it was geared toward a federal resume. In the real world, right, the civilian world, it took us, 8 weeks to become a soldier, right? Left, right. And then we get out in 2 days. And when I transitioned out, there was no great program that really walked me through and gave me reality. Like, this is the reality. You go from hero to zero in a matter of signing your paperwork, you're out, you got your 214, and now you're nobody, and you think you're gonna tell everybody how to operate. Not gonna happen. So I think my biggest scar thing would be that there's that forgotten segment that are at the military entrance processings, that's at recruiting stations that are not near a military installation. What do? Do they get the same, where now there are robust, actual good programs, so to say, at some of the installations? It's not covering everybody. And there are a lot of people that are not getting to transition the same transition as everybody else.
So I think it's fair to say, with your experience, certainly from South Dakota, departing service from South Dakota, vis-a-vis the soldier who's departing service from Fort Hood or Fort Bragg or Lackland Air Force Base, Joint Base, San Antonio, there really is a difference. However, irrespective of that venue, that piece of geography, there still are some significant gaps and some what I would call some real important definitional terms. If you were to take a step back from my mind, I talk about this all the time. We've had this discussion, folks. It's all about purpose. There was never a doubt in my mind when I was in uniform that there was a task that needed to be done and there was a purpose to that task. In other words, I knew what my job within this larger context was all about. And that purpose motivated me. Well, that also motivated me with my colleagues and my buddies left and right. I was not going to disappoint them. So I had purpose in what I was trying to do. Dr. Hall, you've come up with this construct for a definition that you've labeled positionality, which is inarguably not being embraced fully during these transition programs, right? I mean, that's why the CMA, the Centurion Military Alliance, exists to kind of help with this notion of positionality. Because as Michelle said, it takes us minimally 8 weeks to become a soldier. But then when you get your specialty skill, I mean, it could be another 6 months, 7 months, and then some of those skill sets could be another year before you are ready to be deployed to join your next organization to make that contribution. Yet DOD gives you 2 days maybe to say, adios, we're moving out. You know, DOD has a mission, you're no longer a part of that mission. We'll see you, thank you very much for your service to nation. I wouldn't go as far as you did, Michelle, it goes from hero to zero. I'm never going to define myself as zero, nor am I going to I'm looking at 3 incredible veterans. They are not zeros, far from it. But I get it. You're out there, you're flapping, right? You're on your own. So let's talk for a second about positionality, because I think that really helps. Shantae, can you walk us through that and really help us get our arms around it?
Yes, absolutely, Spider, and thank you for painting that picture. And Michelle and KK, I want to share that we all have these experiences, and I think that the big benefit is that we're taking our experiences and we're sharing them, and we're giving you applicable statistics and facts in regard to a future pathway. Now, when we look at the military construct, what we have to look at when we're transitioning is we have to look at societal norms. We have to suspend our bias, and we have to be able to position ourselves against those stereotypical biases and say, okay, this is what's happening on a larger scale. So for when Michelle and I initially went through the transition assistance program, it was only 2 days for Michelle. Actually, it was 5 for me at Warner Robins in Georgia. They had actually just started that. Now it's a week or longer with additional courses, and depending upon which installation you're at. Now, due to KK's experience, I'm proud to say that now KK goes in and he not only supports Centurion Military Alliance at JBSA, but he's teaching our transition assistance program, and he's sharing with them these business techniques and kind of what resonated with him. And so we continue to give back. That's one. When we look at positionality and understanding that no longer are we just looking to our left or our right, thank you for putting it that way, Michelle, but we're looking full circle, full spectrum. We're looking at a global community. We're no longer competing with the individual to our left or our right, or only supporting the individual from our left to our right or our front to our back. We have to look at it from a holistic approach and say, how do we continue to serve our great nation? Again, we raised our right hand to serve, defend, and protect. And so positionality comes in, suspending our bias, and it says, who are you in regard to education, finance, and vocation? Does your level of academia speak to your current employment position, or does it speak to those position descriptions that we're sitting there reading? Whether it's federal, whether it's corporate America, I do think that we now do, again, a phenomenal job within the TAP construct of bringing in the Microsoft, the Amazon, these positions that are readily available, and they're sitting down with us and they're going through how to build out your resume, how to build out a LinkedIn profile. Some get more federal, some get more corporate, again, depending on that installation. And so what we have to know is we have to know ourselves so well that we understand that positionality piece. And are we truly speaking and leveraging our skill sets based off of global demands? It's a yes or a no. And so for us, Centurion Military Alliance, we created this assessment tool as TAP continues to evolve and to expand to meet these real world needs. We've come out with this assessment tool that supports in real time and speaks to who you presently are. Cake, I can speak to this. How many times has someone come in and said, well, I want to be cyber IT, or I want to be, and they look at what they're going to be expected salaries, and they think that they're going to do that just solely due to the salary, not understanding what's expected. Or we go through phenomenal programs like Syracuse University has with Onward to Opportunity, and we think we're going to get this free certification because, again, in 2021, there is a plethora of resources. We are beyond blessed if we tap in and utilize, but it starts with understanding your positionality. Where are you presently and which pillar can give? And so maybe you have to get a job just to get a job and you're not following the passion. But is your mission still not there? The mission to succeed, the mission for the future generation to see us as veterans rising to the top? The mission for that future generation to say, wow, KK, Michelle, Spider, look at where you are today. Yes, through blood, sweat, and tears, but you've made it and you continue to serve. I want to be that when I grow up. I want to take those opportunities. And so I think that, again, it starts with us and knowing ourselves so well that when we walk into a program, we're going to know if it's for us or not. We're going to invest our time and our resources and knowing what's applicable and what we end up taking home.
Shante, let me pull on that. You made a really good point. You used the word certification when you were describing positionality. One of the parts of the educational piece is certification, where young soldier, a serviceman or a trooper is transitioning out, has some very specific skill sets, and in many cases has some broad skill sets. And we've all been in those conversations, right? Multiple conversations where we go, hey, what do you, God bless you, you're leaving service. We wish you the best. What are you thinking about? You know, the leadership conversations that we will inevitably have. What are you thinking about? And almost inevitably, the answer is, I'm really not sure. I've been a medic. I think I want to go work in an emergency room. I think I want to be an EMT, or I'm an administrative advisor. I want to go, I think I want to get in the HR business. I've been an infantryman. I've got some incredible scar tissue in combat. I know how to lead teams. I know how to accomplish tasks, a broad definition of a skill set that every business would love to have. Any business would love to have inherent, trained, and natural leaders solving problems. Just simply give me a problem set and I'll solve it. It may not be within a very specific vertical. So let's talk around the board. KK, what do you think about the notion of pursuing on the educational side, achieving the right skill sets, since you had experience as an airman of creating your own business off to the side and actually bringing folks on board, and you knew what type of skill sets were necessary, not only the characteristics of good leaders and good employees, but also skill sets. So you get into the educational piece, whether folks want to get a bachelor's degree or whether they are saying, no, I'm going to put that on hold because I want to get certified. I use the example of a medic. A medic can save lives in Afghanistan, but she may not be able to become an EMT in Tennessee or Vermont or California because you don't have the certification. Yet you've got this amazing experience that would be a benefit to any organization, any hospital, any team that she joined. KK, can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Yeah, sure. Intimately familiar with the certification process. I actually hold 29 industry certifications myself. I was fortunate because I came from the IT and cyber field, and we are uniquely lucky in the services because we have to get civilian industry recognized certifications throughout our career, right? And the reason being is, although we might be using a military cyber weapon system, right, we still traverse commercial networks. We use commercial hardware. We use commercial, right? The military doesn't make up routers and switches, and right, we ride some commercial infrastructure almost all of the time. once we leave the base or post or whatever the case may be. Excuse me. So we have to get certified on these systems, which the military cannot train us on, right? So I was fortunate enough throughout my career to have this path that was kind of set forth to a commercial standard, right? And the way I explain it to a lot of my mentorees or friends or other service members is they say, well, I have the experience. Why do I need the certification? I have the degree. Why do I need the certification? And what it boils down to, right, is I say this. If you don't have the certification and you're in the interview, right, the only thing I'm left with is your word. And then they say on whether you can do it or not. And they say, well, no, I can show them once I get in with my hands on. And then I say, well, if that's the case, they're already going to have to invest in hiring you, right? So they need to know what skill set you have at first glance, at quick glance, right, to discern if they're willing to bring you on and invest to find out what you have. So what it really comes down to is the importance of certifications is that baseline level. If you have X certification, does it mean you're the greatest nurse ever? No, but we know if you have X certification in nursing, you have this baseline level of knowledge, and we can build from there. And is that baseline level of knowledge enough to hire you for our organization, right? In the military, we use rank traditionally as that gauge. If you're a senior NCO, I know I can give you this and expect this back, and vice versa, right? Ultimately, and this is why I fell in love with CMA the very first time I attended, is it all ties back to positionality, right? Are you in the position? Are you creating the backing for that position that you want to be, and exploring the position you're currently in? Do they all align, right? There's some tough questions for veterans sometimes, especially when your career path has told you otherwise. And as Shantae's dad, Dr. Hall, puts it, we got to take that gut check sometimes. We got to take that gut check, take a knee, come back and re-engage, right? Assess our positionality and re-engage.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Michelle, you've got a degree from Trident. You went through a process that you described because you were active duty and you're a veteran, and your access to educational opportunity was different because you're a different learner, right? You're a mature learner. You're not an 18-year-old going to the University of Missouri. You've got some worldly experience. You've got some great capabilities you're bringing forward. You have a life. Life gets in front of us. The military is there to help in many ways. The military in many ways gives you a construct that's going to be difficult to navigate. You've navigated it exceptionally well. So explain, if you can, how that notion of certification that Kekai described so well, that Shantae has described as a pillar of her notion of positionality, how is it that you, in your particular experience, were able to embrace this notion of positionality? Whether you knew the term or not, you did it, right? And now it's been defined for you. Can you describe your education certification? I mean, you're in an incredibly high-powered, immensely impressive position, doing wonderful things for veterans and others in a civilian community exceptionally broadly. Can you explain how that connection between education, the causality between your choices on education and what you're able to contribute?
Absolutely. I love the whole positionality, and I didn't know the term then, but when I heard Shantae say it, it was like, that's it. It makes sense. So one of my things, and I can kind of relate this as when I was a recruiter, I would tell my recruits, every new recruit, I would tell them party on the weekend, go to class during the week, right? Because you're going to get out at some point. You will not stay in the military for the rest of your life. You have to be focused on what am I going to do beyond the military, whether your plan is to stay 2 years or 20 years, at some point you will exit. And so what is your idea of what you're going to do? While I was in, I actually earned my undergrad degree, right? I didn't earn it in one night. I earned it over time, and it was just one chunk at a time, one bite at a time. Then I went on to get the first master's degree. And that, again, was one bite at a time. I didn't go clubbing. I didn't go party. I had a focus on what I needed to do, because I knew at some point my military career was going to end and I would have to engage in the civilian world. And I love what Kekai said. He said, he was referring to the first glance, right? And how do you tell somebody being in the HR world that I have the skills, I'm coming in, I have the skills, but I have no certification. And Kekai and Shante, you guys are all over it because I see this every single day. I want you to hire me. I want you to pay me $100,000. I have the military experience, but what do you have beyond the experience, right? Where's your certifications? What did you do while you were in the military? You were in for 25 years. Did you get a degree? No, I didn't get a degree. I'm thinking about going back, and everybody don't get degrees, but there is another route, and that's that certification, right? And the certification might only take you 6 weeks. It might take you 2 weeks, depending on the certification. But that focus of making sure I am positioning myself when I exit the military, not just educational wise, but financially. Okay, I'm getting out. It's a big shock when you're getting out and all the stuff that we take for granted while you're in. Where's my finances now, right? How am I going to live? Nobody's paying my electric bill for me, or nobody's giving me extra money to buy food. So I think all of that positionality, and then when you start talking in that, when you move from the military, you have a sure thing, you know you're getting paid every month, to Shantae said something earlier, taking a job just to have a job initially, right? To get your foot in that door. And that's real. Like, okay, I may not make 100,000 a year. Let me take this job making 25,000. At least I'm making something. But a lot of people don't want to do that. And I have heard, and I've actually had somebody bring me a reference letter from General Petraeus, and said, well, I got this reference letter from General Petraeus. In reality is, in the civilian world, nobody knows who General Petraeus is. Maybe a few people, right? You're around the military base, but a lot of people don't, right? Just reality. I don't know who that is, and I really don't care. I need to know what you can do. What is it that you can do? What are you bringing to the table? If I'm giving you $100,000, what are you giving me in turn? And while you say that you have the experience, I don't know, you could have just kind of skimmed through the military, you flew under the radar, you barely did your job. I don't know. So I need something, you need to bring something to me and be able to tell me what those skills are. And a certification or a degree is often that thing that employers are looking. And I will tell you, I have 2 positions open right now, and I'm having a hard time filling them. I just need somebody with the skill set, right? I need somebody with some kind of certifications, and I'm having a hard time with that.
Michelle, that is a great point. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's very personal, obviously. Shante, I'm gonna ask you again about positionality. It's got those 3 pillars. They're all aspirational, right? But the one thing you can do, the common thread in all of our stories, is the notion about what you as an individual can do to enhance your positionality in advance of departure or at some time in your journey. Let's be frank, transition is not a discrete event. It exists over time. I am still in transition. I grew up as an Army brat. I served in the Army my entire life. I have worn a uniform my entire life. I am still in transition. And what am I doing during this period of transition to enhance my positionality as I continue to transition? So Shante, talk to me about the discussion that we've had before on 90-10, the thing that our Congress calls a loophole, for goodness sakes. It's an earned benefit, a hard-earned benefit. It is not an entitlement that a veteran has access to educational opportunities that in many cases are routinely being challenged. And it baffles the mind that you would want to take a hard-earned benefit, service to nation. Shante, you were the first one to say it. Quote, I raised my right hand to support and defend the Constitution. God, it brings tears to my eyes. So what's wrong with a veteran with whom we give and empower with immense trust, wrapped is in incredible power. And then we don't trust them to make decisions on where they want to try to get an education based on what Michelle and Kekai have described is an absolute personal requirement on their part to improve that educational access. Shante, can you walk us through your thoughts, which I know you have?
Just a couple thoughts. You know, Spider, Michelle, Kekai, thank you from the bottom of my heart for, again, continuing to serve. You know, I sleep better at night knowing when I look at my 7 and my 8-year-old that they still want to raise their right hand to serve, defend, and protect. We have to be, while we're serving, we're lifelong learners. If we've proven anything on this call today, it is that we are lifelong learners, that through thick and thin, I know most of us have taken classes while we were deployed. I know I was in Iraq. I know I've tried every platform available to me. I've utilized every resource. And it is an absolute insult as a veteran, for one who raised my right hand to serve, defend, and protect. And I will tell you, I did so. My father was my recruiter. He made goal that month. Besides that, I chose my career path with him so that I could achieve my degrees, so that I could capitalize and utilize my educational benefits. My entire family has served this great nation. And I will say that when I'm looking at such things like the 90-10 Spider, it's an insult for you to tell me now that I don't have the intelligence, the intellect to look at these educational institutions, whether degree, certification, licensure, and you're telling me that now I can't make my own decision based off of a benefit that I earned. There's no rationale behind it. So I've heard, well, Shante, we want to make sure that you're not taken advantage of. Do you? Let's pause for a moment, because that's really kind of you. But in the same sentence, you'll tell me how you're concerned about the taxpayers' dollars. So I pause and I reflect on the statements, and then I look at a military installation. And if any of us on this call today are honest and can look at a military installation, how much revenue, and KK and I can go toe to toe with this when we're looking at Lackland Air Force Base, how much revenue does an installation bring to a community? We take Joint Base San Antonio alone, weekly basic training graduations, weekly for an enlisted population that has raised their right hand to serve, defend, and protect, most of them in order to get that GI Bill benefit. Families coming in, spending, whether it's their savings, they're charging it, they're providing economic stability for the city of San Antonio alone, and that's one small example. But then you're gonna tell me that you're concerned. There's a used car lot outside of every single military installation. There's a bar outside of every military installation. And you're looking at veterans on this call today who said, you know what, no matter what, we're gonna strive to fight and get our education. I served prior to September 11th when I first joined, and I will tell you that I went to a local community college that was vetted by the installation, mind you, vetted by the installation. September 11th happened, and KK remembers, we weren't allowed to leave our dorms. So we were on base for about a week. I missed a week of work. And I was the one who, again, my family joined, I was joining, I had the backpack, I was excited about school, making straight A's. KK and I go way back to where we've always made sure that we were who we said we were. We were going to prove to you that not only were we serving, but we were serving our communities. And when I went back to school after that week, I was actually told that I couldn't make up my work. I was told I couldn't make up my schoolwork. I missed a couple tests, and I was so angry at the time that I took W's for those classes, and I had to pay them back. So we look at now where we are from a level of academic institutions and who's allowed on installation. And we're appreciative that the Department of Defense looks at this and says, you know what, we want to make sure that we're taking care of our troops while they're wearing the uniform. We want to vet these schools. But make no mistake, you're not vetting the used car sales lot outside of our installations. We have the level of intellect to make our own choices, and we should be afforded the right for a benefit that we earn to make that choice.
I love it. So here's that's wonderful, Shantae. Thank you very much. Yeah, KK, that's right. Very, very well said. So here's a jump ball. Shantae, your dad and I, Dr. Hall, so we have Doctors Hall engaged here, published an op-ed in the Stars and Stripes a couple of months ago, a month or so ago, essentially saying what you just said far more personally and far more articulately, which is 90/10 is a couple of things. 90/10 is labeled a loophole in the law in terms of the entire amount of federal funding a university or a college can take in order to pay for students. I find that immensely insulting because loophole by itself is a pejorative negative term. And it sounds like somebody is getting over or getting away with something when you describe it as a loophole. That on a personal level is incredibly insulting. But I go back to the fundamental thing. So this is a jump ball. I'd like either KK or Michelle, if you could respond. Here we have an opportunity to define your educational certification, advancement, aspirational path. And somebody from the US government is saying, no. Thank you for your service, but no. Now that you're out of uniform or while you're in uniform, the answer is no. You can't do it. And you kind of, I mean, it truly is an insulting approach toward your individual desires because veterans are not traditional learners. We're not all going to go to the University of Tennessee or Brown University. We're not going to do that. We're going to take advantage of those elements, those niches in our arc of life. We have this incredibly rich experience. Our arc of life is continually, we are redefining it as we go along. We are not traditional learners. We will learn when we can, how we can, on a path and a topic we can, based on this rucksack full of experiences. So what's a message, Michelle or KK, in terms of where we should go vis-a-vis this notion of 90/10, which is the law? Nobody's suggesting that it be 85/15, that it be modified in some way. My view is that let's stop calling it a loophole and just let it go. Let that exist and let veterans make choices. Because if you altered 90/10, a number of available institutions would dry up and go away. And there would be soldiers right now going, well, or troopers going, well, what about me? Why did that happen? I enjoyed my experience with fill in the blank university. It's no longer available. So let me stop talking. Either KK or Michelle, have you got a thought?
Yeah. I'll jump in first. I'm incredibly familiar with exactly what you're talking about, unfortunately, and I'd actually gone through that journey. So one of my companies is a VA approved post-secondary school. We don't confer degrees, and think of it as a cyber trade school essentially, right? You can use your VA benefits to go get those kind of educational pathways. And prior to going and getting certified, I almost didn't want to do it because of all of the things that come with it on the back end. Now, I won't get into the weeds. I mean, that's a 5-hour conversation about all of the difficulties from the school's perspective, right? But it's really, really tough. It's really tough. And that says something to the flip side of what Shantae was talking about. As a veteran-owned school, I had to ask myself the question, can I even support veterans having to follow these kind of regulations that just don't make sense? I mean, I would like to think as a veteran, I would be uniquely qualified to train other veterans, right? But these things make it difficult. And at the end of the day, I mean, like they're not vetting car lots, right? And for the most part, education specifically is a highly regulated industry, and I think they should just leave it up to the state level. I mean, you can't open up a school without becoming certified by the state. So why do we need to go through this whole other process and follow these rules that it just makes it really, really tough. There are some other ones, again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but it makes it really tough for the school's perspective. And like you said, they start either closing down or just no, we don't take the GI Bill or whatever the case may be, right? And the veteran's left with, huh? Why not? So, I mean, that's another perspective of it.
I think exactly what you all just said. And Shantae, you were all over it, nailed it. When you start telling the veteran that they can't go to that school, maybe that's the only vet school that is available to the veteran. And when you say that this school is not available, it's hurting that soldier, right? They've served, they want to go, they're trying to get their life in order, right? They're trying to get that certification, and now I can't go. It's hurting. Ultimately, it hurts that veteran. It hurts the school, right? The programs go away. I went to Liberty University, very military friendly school, very, very. I can't imagine it. When I graduated, there were over 7,000 graduates, and I cannot tell you the number of those graduates who were veterans, right? So imagine if you do this, the 90-10, and they say, well, we no longer can support you because of the 90-10 rule or whatever, you know, then what happens to the support or those soldiers that was getting that support from Liberty University, right? Or Trident, you know, or you name it, there's a ton of different programs out there, but then you take that away, now what? And so it's hurting. It would also hurt the economy. Okay, I mean, you're talking not just one level, there's a multi-level thing that's going on here. And I love the whole analogy. You go outside any military installation, you will find that used car and they're charging the soldiers, right, a ton of money to get these cars, even furniture stores, right? They're preying on them. Let's bet some of that and not mess with our education.
And if I may, Spider, just one more quick comment. You know, I think you can't quantify experience. And to Michelle's point, she said she's hiring for 2 positions. I'm hiring for multiple positions with the Department of State, Bureau of Medical Services, KKI's hiring. And we start to look at this and think, I can't bring you on board because you're not articulating and translating your experience that is equivalent to that meets the requirements on this civilian position description. And so putting any rule on our GI Bill, whether it's 90-10, whether it's 85-15, fill in the blank with a number, what you're telling me is you're threatening and you're putting the GI Bill in a category that to where it could be manipulated or taken from us. And I think that's the biggest takeaway is that, again, it's our earned benefit. If I want to go take dance classes and become a certified dance instructor, I should be able to do that because I'm going to continue to give back to my community, and that's going to keep me happy. It's going to keep that next generation happy. And again, the future is going to witness us becoming successful in our own right. And my last point, I'm so glad I saw the Soldier Recovery Unit here on this call, Jason McGee, and I'll share that the Soldier Recovery Units, they're doing such a phenomenal job now at looking at soldiers, our wounded, our airmen, our military community, that they didn't have the option to transition like we may have. And so we have to understand that transition does not discriminate. All of this is happening in real time. Don't threaten the very benefits or take away the very benefits of one of the reasons why we continue to want to serve and why we go out there and we make stuff happen within our communities, because we are bringing economic opportunity, we are thriving, and we are individuals through sickness, through deployments, through wounds, through taking care of families, through you name it. And we're still meeting the requirements that this great nation says, hey, these are the requirements you need to have. If we're still meeting those metrics, why would you look to take away a benefit or put stipulations or government regulations on it? Thank you.
No, that's wonderful. And it really defies logic. It also runs in the face of the law. And it's incredibly troubling to me that this is really a discussion. You've really framed it so all 3 of you have really framed it so very well. If it's good for the goose, is it good for the gander? Why are we not vetting these folks, yet we're vetting these folks? I find it very hard to get my head around. I'm mindful of everybody's time. This has been an incredibly wonderful discussion. Let me do this before we thank everybody for showing up and taking some time with us this afternoon. Let me start with you, Michelle, and then to you, Kekai, and then Shante, if you'll please follow up. So Michelle, Kekai, Shante, can you give us your last thoughts on, just very, very briefly, kind of one last thought that comes to mind as we talk about veterans and transition, the notion of positionality, and how those very key decisions need to be made, and the construct for this.
Absolutely. So I think my last thoughts would be encouragement. If you're in that transitioning process, right, take charge. If you are in that process or will be in that process in 2, 3, 4 years, take charge. If you are now transitioned out, take charge. Know what you're gonna do. Have a plan financially, mentally, because it is a big jump and it's a big difference, right? Educationally, whatever that road looks like for you, you are responsible for you and you have to take charge. The things that we're talking about on this call, we need, each person is going to be responsible. And Shante said that earlier. You're responsible. You need to know what your educational benefits are, right? Every single person needs to know, okay, this may be an issue. Let me look into this. If this is the first time you're hearing of 90/10, what the heck is that, right? Find out what that is, but take charge of your future. What are my plans when I walk out of the military, which one day I will do, or now that I'm out of the military, what am I gonna do, right? I encourage you now. Now is the time, even if you're already out, sit down, pause for a minute, and take charge. Know what you are going to do and what it's going to take, how you're going to get there, and do it.
Thanks, Michelle.
I like to do two main points. I'll piggyback off Michelle on the first one, and it really comes down to, like she said, knowing yourself, and at least we do it in the military, right? Define your target. Define your target, because it's going to help you define your positionality. I mean, it's almost one of our biggest benefits as being a service member. We can do anything, right? I mean, Spider, you talked about, just tell me what you need me to do. I will execute that mission. So oftentimes it also becomes our biggest drawback when we're transitioning. Hey, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know, because I can do this. I can do this. Well, if you tell me that means you're telling me you don't even know where you're going to start, right? So you have to define your target, right? Define your target, and even if you're wrong, right? We adjust fire all the time. Common term. We adjust fire all the time. Nothing new to us, right? So define your target first. Nothing wrong with being wrong and having to adjust fire once in a while, right? Now, pivoting to my next point, I think we need to utilize the Skill Bridge program more often. I think it needs to be integrated into TAPS even. For those of you not familiar with the Skill Bridge program, it's that 6-month internship possibility towards the end of your service, where you get released to go out in industry and see how they do things on that side. Get some real OJT hands-on, something that's really familiar to us, right? A concept of learning that's really familiar to us. So why not utilize that? I really hope a lot of service members take advantage of that, as well as our senior leaders, not just in the military, but on the legislative side, understand how powerful that tool is and could be integrated within the TAPS program as well. So those are my two.
Thanks, Kekai. And Shante, some final thoughts?
Absolutely, thank you. And thank you, Michelle and Kekai and Spider, absolutely phenomenal. At the end of the day, our future generations depend on us. They depend on us for whether it's serving in the military, whether it's looking at these educational benefits. The Centurion Military Alliance multidisciplinary curriculum that we instruct, again, is on positionality. And so when one looks at educational attainment, financial literacy, vocational proficiency, there's a foundation of holistic health, well-being, and resiliency. And the reason that is because in the military, and I pride myself on this, and I know Kekai, Michelle, and Spider would say the same, while we're in, we do this so well, so in sync, that we are self-aware, we know where we stand, whether it's due to rank structure, whether it's due to level of academics, we know our positionality while serving. And so someone asked, well, what if schools are taking advantage? What can Congress do? Are there not educational institutions taking advantage of any given population? Pick and choose. Are there not individuals saying, you know what, mom and dad, I'm just going to go to college first, or I got this scholarship, or I got whatever, fill in the blank, X, Y, and Z. And do they not have the same loopholes, if we want to use that word, and they end up not completing their level of education because something that happens? And so there's all these different stigmas associated. What I would say is that we have to look at society and we have to say on a global scale, we all just witnessed and faced transition. We all just got through a global pandemic. We are not through it yet, but we are coming out of it, and we have done it together. We have witnessed in real time people coming together via Zoom, Microsoft Teams, fill in the blank with the technology, and operating not just locally, but again on a global scale, providing economic opportunity, people getting employment opportunities, individuals completing their level of academics due to online. And so we have to take a step back and say, okay, now how do we successfully leverage this and move forward strategically again? Because the future generation depends on it. How do we utilize our voices? How do we continue to be strong advocates out in the community? And so when I'm looking at Congress and I'm looking at what could we do to support the efforts of the Department of Defense, of the DOL, of the VA, and we're looking at the thing called Transition Assistance Program, what can we do better? Start implementing this thought process earlier on, just like we do with our children. I look at my children in kindergarten. What do you want to be when you grow up? We ask these questions and then we join the military and we forget. Transition does not discriminate. Transition happens to all of us at any given time, any of us. And again, we have to have the resiliency, the adaptability, the fortitude to step up and look at another and say, the future generation depends on me meeting the requirements of X, Y, and Z. Our colleges and institutions, our certifications, KKI wouldn't have started his own business with certifications had there not been a global demand. I know this man. He doesn't do anything small. And so he's looking from a global perspective going, these are the future needs. These are the demands. Our colleges and our institutions and those certifications and licensures and degree programs are there for a reason. There's a need for it. And so do your research. Go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Look at the next 5 years, 10 years. Look at industry specifics. Look at how you can advance and continue to grow. And at the end of the day, we take it. What can Congress do? We take a step back as military service members. And I know what all of us would agree with on this call is that, yes, we'd like to take action. Yes, we would like to make changes overnight. But what we will do in the interim is we will meet your demands. We will meet your needs. We will take our hard-earned benefits because we raised our right hand to serve, defend, and protect. And we will continue to do so in our local communities and on a global scale, wherever we may be. So thank you to all of you for being on today. Especially thank you to the families, the supporters, those military service members that make sure you're including your families during this process. And to the soldier recovery units, just a huge shout out. Thank you for joining us today as well. You're definitely owning your transition and we all appreciate it.
Hey, folks, that was very powerful. Thank you. Wow. Thank you very, very much. So Dr. Hall, Ms. Lowe, Dr. Namahu, thank you very, very much for your service, first and foremost, and for your insights today. Thanks for the participants. And if we didn't get to your questions or your comments, my apologies. I failed in my duties as a moderator, but you can go to cmawarrior.org and address all of those and continue to populate that with more thoughts and more comments. So thank you again to everybody. And thanks for joining us this afternoon. God bless America. You guys are great. All the best. I just ended.